Joining us here, however, on the Rich Eisen Show is somebody who I truly appreciate his work. I've gotten to meet him, and I'm appreciative of him saying yes when I said on behalf of all Jets fans, I think I need to have this man on. Mark Schlereth and all 10 of his fingers here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing great, man. Always good to catch up with you, Rich.
Always good to catch up with you. What's going on with you these days? Anything going on with you these days? Mark, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm just grinding, man. I'm doing my radio show in Denver. Obviously, I'm doing
your Stinkin' Truth podcast. Yep.
What's that?
You're doing the Stinkin' Truth podcast as well.
Stinkin' Truth podcast, yeah. And right now I've just been kind of grinding on film and studying football and getting ready for another NFL season on Fox.
Okay.
So, which is always fun. I've had the opportunity here the last couple of years to consult for a couple of teams and kind of more about run game and offensive line play and how to put all that together. I think one of the things that have been lost in the NFL, and I mean, you cover the league, so you understand this. One of the things that have been lost, the more we get away from practice, the more we get away from contact, the more we get away from being together, the more nuance is lost in the game. And so I think one of the things that coaches try to bring back is some of the nuance, some of the things and techniques that we can work on and we can understand that better helps our players grow in this game when we can't be on the football field as much. So it's one of those things, kind of a little niche that I have found for myself here in the last few years while working for Fox and doing games every Sunday.
Okay, so you're saying, Mark Schlereth, that getting on the field and getting coached up is important. So you're saying that the value of a valuable head coach could not be any higher. That's what you're saying, right, Mark? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think head coaching, I think coaching in general, I think assistant coaching, I think all that stuff is incredibly important.
Okay, certainly. So if you hire a new head coach and you think you've hit on that new head coach, that whatever maybe have happened in previous regimes, that might have nothing to do with whatever's happening from here on out. Would you say that is a well-established potential in the NFL?
Well, certainly there is potential for that to be true.
Yes.
And I know what you're getting at. I mean, I'm not, I've got it figured out, Rich.
You linemen are very smart, Mark, and you're a sharp man. You're a sharp man. You've got inference skills. I understand that. So, yeah, you see what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah. No. I will tell you, yes. Robert Saleh, one of the guys who mentors me is Mike Shanahan. Mike Shanahan obviously connected Kyle Shanahan, his son, head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Robert Saleh was the defensive coordinator. So I spent time at Mike Shanahan's house learning football. And one of the things, when you're a player, you watch the game, Rich, through the straw hole with which, or through the prism with which you played it, right?
Yes.
And so when you get into the booth, oftentimes one of the things that you need to do is expand the aperture and open up your eyes and have a more global perspective of the game. So I spent a lot of time with Shanahan. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I watched every install meeting that Robert Saleh put in as a defensive coordinator for the 49ers. So I watched every one of their meetings, put in their entire defense, watched the coverages and how the fronts and the coverages work together, the linebacking core, the whole 9 yards. He is one of my favorite people in the National Football League. He is a leader of men. He is a smart coach. He's all those things. And I think it's tremendous hire for the New York Jets. That being said, as I always say,
yes.
Had the games been played on paper, I would have spent a lot less time on an operating table. Yes. It takes more than that. It takes the right character men. Joe Gibbs said this to me when I first came in the league. He said it to our team all the time. You know what? Great athletes will win you or make plays in the first three quarters. Character men that care about each other and are willing to sacrifice win games in the fourth quarter. And so there is a cultural aspect to playing this game and playing this game well
yes.
that has to take place. And I think that's the thing that misses most people that are fans of football think it's just about good players. And that is part of the equation, but that's not the entirety of the equation.
But I think you saw, Mark, as your comments on our Buddy McAfee show on Friday, that to say – to the Jets fan base that their entire history is filled with stinking, to use a phrase, and thus having another quarterback brought in with a new regime, the reset button that's been hit that everybody's now believing in is just wiped off the face. I think, and you're also seeing a very fragile fan base, Mark. A very fragile fan base. You've been exposed to.
I can understand why.
Yes.
I've gone through the last 6 seasons here as a Bronco guy that does a radio show every day. I understand fragility. And I understand how fleeting winning games is. You're 100% right. You know, my basic comments on Pat's show was not about the Jets in general. It was about the state of quarterbacks coming out of the draft in this league and the way the league covets those and moves those guys up in the draft based upon the position that they play. And if you just look at the recent history, you know, there was a stat that went around from 2009 to 2016, 22 first-round draft choices at the quarterback position were taken. None of them are with their current team that drafted them. It's a really hard thing to be great. And when you come into a situation where you are supposed to be the savior, you know, I look at it this way, Rich. I think there's about 4 quarterbacks in the league that cover warts. The rest of the quarterbacks in the league expose them. And so when you come in as a young quarterback and you don't necessarily understand the game and you haven't played at that level with that level of player around you, and you're asked to go be the savior of the franchise, whether it's the Jets or whether it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, I don't care who it is. It's a really tough task. And, you know, people have this misconception that, well, look at what Mahomes did. Well, Mahomes came into a ready-made situation where they were winning 12 games a year with Alex Smith, and he had the benefit of Alex Smith being a wonderful mentor, a guy that coached him along the way and then knew that he was coaching him into his spot and he was going to leave. So I think there's a difference in the way you build a team. And I've just been a believer in you have to have an entire football team. You have to have an entire roster and a good roster to take the pressure off those young guys. Otherwise, you know, you're destined to fail. To me, it's one of those things, and I always look at organizations this way. Mm-hmm. You put a guy in a position to fail, then don't act shocked when he actually fails if you put him in that position.
Mark Schlereth here on the Rich Eisen Show. Pardon me, 3-time Super Bowl champion Mark Schlereth here on the Rich Eisen Show. In just one 2-minute video, Mark, you did better than your Wikipedia page could ever do to actually educate people on your career. Walk me through how you. Look. Even a Jet fan, diehard as I am, I laughed heartily at your video. Walk me through your production process for that, Mark.
Well, you know, it's funny because I didn't realize I offended anybody. And it goes back to your former comment where I was just talking about football in generalities and
yes.
Jets came up. And the next thing I know, I've offended a whole fan base,
yes,
right?
Sir.
Which I think most Jet fans got the humor in it. So I literally flew out to Arizona to see my former offensive line coach, Alex Gibbs, and just to catch up and to go visit him.
Yes.
And then I came back I came back on Saturday evening, and I had all these Twitter messages, people mad at me, and I just said to myself, well, you know, I'm just gonna sit down when I get home and you know, do a sarcastic apology, and I literally grabbed my Super Bowl rings, walked into the study, and I have some helmets, all the helmets that I wore in Super Bowls, they're sitting up there. So I grabbed one of the helmets, and I literally did it in one take, and I sent it to McAfee. I go, "What do you think?"
Oh,
and
he's your editor.
Right. No, I just because I really didn't want to. There was part of me that was like, just let sleeping dogs lie.
Right.
And he goes, "Dude, you have to post this. This is hilarious." And I actually I pushed the pause button even after I sent it to McAfee because McAfee's not necessarily, he's not necessarily the guy that you want to lean on for guidance, right? So then I sent it to my kids, who are all older now, and they're all like, "Dad, you got to do it." And so then I posted it, and it just went it just went crazy.
Yes, it did. It's closing in on 1 million views as we're sitting here, Mark. But in terms of just giving you an idea of, because again, I understand Broncos fans went through all those lean years prior to Elway, and then those years where they thought Elway was going to win it and then didn't, and then obviously you and Terrell Davis and a whole bunch of others came along. And, the Jets fans, you can't compare Broncos fans with Jets fans in terms of searching for somebody. At least you had Elway. At least you have rings. I mean, at least you have those moments. Like, Jets fans finally got the coach right with the Giants championship head coach and the Patriots head coach who went to the Jets with Curtis Martin. Got that right. Got the quarterback and Vinny Testaverde, getting him to get the actual big-time play to finally come to roost that we saw blossoming in Cleveland, right? Got all of that. I was second to last row in the stadium that day, Mark Schlereth, that led to that middle finger ring of yours. 2 years into my Sports Center career, wearing my Wesley Walker jersey that I had as a kid, still fit from my Camp Loconda and Trails End camp days, sitting up there. I heard how deafening the silence was as you trotted off to the locker room down 3-0, then down 10-0. I did see the two people, part of the lost fumbles on the day. One of them, Dave Meggett, let an ensuing kickoff after the first Denver touchdown hit the turf that led to a fumble and then another score. And then Keith Byers fumbling. I mean, I could go on and on and on. The scars are there. The middle finger was flipped in that direction. And even I did laugh. But that's who you're dealing with, Mark, when you say that the new reset doesn't matter, essentially.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I completely get it. And I think it does matter. And I don't know Joe Douglas, the GM, but like I said, I'm a huge Robert Saleh. The first thing I did when Robert Saleh got the job was texted him because I was genuinely happy for him. And, you know, one of the things that I think that really sets you apart as a good football team, Rich, is when you get to the point of unselfishness where you can celebrate somebody else's success like it was your own. And that doesn't happen very often in any walk of life.
That's cool.
And when you become that tight as a football team, I told you I went to see my old offensive line coach. I spent the night and a day with my backup in Denver, a guy by the name of Dave Diaz-Infante, who coaches in the league. Dave Diaz-Infante has the right, based upon our careers and our career path, to loathe me, to hate me. We affectionately called him the stunt guard because he practiced for me Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I played on the games on Sunday. And we are best of friends. We studied together. We prepared together. And he celebrates my success like it was his own. And when I went out in 1997 with herniated discs in L5, S1, both sides, and had an operation, 27 days later, I was on the practice field. And I told Mike Shanahan in a private meeting, if you think David is playing better than me, then you need to continue to play him for the rest of this playoff push, and I'll sit on the bench. But it means that much to me as a player. And when you're willing to make those type of sacrifices, you have the chance to be a really good team. Unfortunately, there's very few teams in any stretch of life, in any organization or any league, that are willing to make those sacrifices for one another.
Mark Schlereth here on the Rich Eisen Show. Before I let you go, sir, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask what you think Elway and the Broncos are evaluating at quarterback, sitting there at 8. It's entirely possible that a couple quarterbacks fall as far as 9. Pardon me. The Panthers are sitting there at 8. They just did get Sam Darnold, which I heard might have been talked about on the McAfee show on Friday. But what do you think the Broncos are doing at 9, and what Elway's evaluation of Drew Lock is, as he's apparently working with Peyton Manning this offseason? What do you have for me on that front?
Yeah, well, George Payton obviously is running the show now. He came over from Minnesota, and so they're tag teaming this situation. But I think ultimately, I keep looking at what George Payton has done. He put his toe in the water when it came to Matthew Stafford, but he didn't want to pay the price. Right? When you're rebuilding a team, and the Broncos, frankly, have not been very good. And, people will point to the last couple of drafts and say, well, look at all the starters they got. Well, let me just say this. Bad teams still have to start 22. Okay?
Yes.
It's not like you say, hey, we only have 7 guys that are worth a crap, so we're only going to start 7. Now, you still got to start 11 on each side. So a lot of times you'll get duped into believing we had a good draft because we got all these starters. Well, some of those starters should be backups. And so when I look at the Broncos over the last few years under Elway, they're not deep enough. They have not done a good enough job in free agency or the draft. And so I think their roster is about 24, 25 deep. What I see is a guy that doesn't want to jump in to the fray and pay the price. The San Francisco 49ers. Look at what they got for to move up from 12 to 3,
right,
and all the draft commodities they gave up to do that. I don't think George Paton is willing to do that. I think he looks at it and says, I want to build a football team. I think he is more apt to trade out of number 9 back and pick up more draft capital than he would be to move up and chase a quarterback.
I mean, sometimes Drew Lock looks terrific, Mark. You know, like remember that time you went in and just boat raced the Texans, just smoked them, and we've seen some games out of him where against the Chargers in division, which is always important. I mean, we've seen it. I just don't know if do you think Elway thinks he is the guy? Like, because I mean, I understand George Payton's in here, but Elway is the Duke,
right?
So and that's the position here. So what do you think?
I think there's enough flashes to where you're saying this is not an excuse, but it's a reason. You got to understand, this kid has had 4 different coordinators in college,
right?
And his first 2 years, he's had 2 coordinators in the pros. And the only way you learn what you like and what you don't like, Rich, when you play is getting your ass kicked. Like, I get down to the red zone, we run a play, and I get my ass kicked on. I'm like, boy, I don't like that play. I know the pitfalls of that play.
Right.
But the only way I know the pitfalls of that play is by playing it. And you start to think about all the language, you start talking about formations, and you say, hey, trips right nasty, H right outside, two jet, branch buffalo on 3, can it with wide with trips right nasty, wide left, 18 weak on there is a ton of stuff that you have to know, and every time you say something you have to have the vision. And just because you call something buffalo, you need to know the tight end's on a through route, he's our number 1 target, the F is on a pick curl, and the Z is running a now. And you've got to know, hey, if one side is zone, and then I've got a man beater on one side and a zone beater on the there's so much to know. And when you change an offense every year, I talked to Drew Lock last year before I called the game, and he's like, listen, when I was at Missouri, I didn't even have to know the protections. Everything was a 7-man protection. Like, we're just chucking it deep. Like, all those things that you have to learn. So I think there's enough patience to go, he has got the talent level. Can we hone that, and can he start to understand second year, the first time he's been in an offense for 2 years in a row in the last 6 years? Can he be the guy? I think they're fixing to find out.
Okay, Mark, before I let you go, I know we've been talking long enough. You got a good Steve Atwater story. He's we missed him in the pandemic and everything, is the fact that he's a Hall of Famer now. So you got a good one, because he was on the field that day in that middle finger Super Bowl ring run. So what do you got for me?
Well, go back to the end of that Super Bowl. Steve Atwater, the end of that Super Bowl, knocked out Randy Hilliard. He knocked out 3 players, including himself, and we had to put 3 backups in the game at that point. But the funniest thing, so when Chick and Atwater was there and Dennis Smith was there, they all called him Lumba. Like lumber.
Yeah, right.
And he was really proud to have that nickname Lumba when he was a rookie, because what he thought it meant was he would bring the wood, which obviously he would. But they nicknamed him Lumba because he was stiff as a board, and so there was always this. They had this internal joke that that he was running around puff chest because he thought they were commenting on how hard he hit, and they were really commenting on how stiff he was. So, some of the little locker room stuff that's always fun. But he's one of the greatest human beings,
no doubt,
on the planet. Love Steve Atwater. Has a unbelievable family, unbelievable kids, and his wife Letha, amazing parents. And I tell you what, he was a dispenser of justice. I mean, you talk about a guy that had blatant disregard for his own well-being. He did not care. He was going to knock you out.
He was great. He was an all-time great. And, in the pandemic, you forget that he actually is getting in, and we'll hear his speech one day. And It'll be great. Hey, Mark, I appreciate the call. The Stinkin' Truth podcast. Everybody should go download it where all podcasts are acquired. And also that business of you, going to NFL teams and working for them on their run game. I would scratch the Jets off your list, despite you liking Robert Saleh. I would say that you've put that a little bit in danger. But, hey, there's, 30 other teams. You're good. So
we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine on this one.
Clearly, that video was great. And hey, look, and I know you got McAfee and your kids. I assume Wingo is on the golf course. So if you ever need anybody to maybe vet something, whether you're hovering over the send button, I'm there for you too, Mark. Anytime.
Rich, I appreciate you, man. Always, like I said, always great to catch up.
Right
and
back at you.
I will give you just a quick props on the way out.
Sure.
You and everybody else, when I first walked off the football field onto the broadcasting desk at Sports Center and everywhere else, you guys were always so gracious to me, made me feel like family. So I appreciate your piece in my career as a broadcaster. Thank you.
Mark, really appreciate that, brother. Let's do this seriously more often. Let's not have you just flip off the entire fan base that I'm a part of to make me want to get you on the show, okay? Let's just do this for real.
Anytime.
Okay.
Anytime.
You got it. That's Mark Schlereth, everybody. He's number one. He's number one. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.